And we're here with Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I want to start the episode off by first giving our condolences to David Pastrnak and his girlfriend. They lost their newborn son just a few days ago. Horrible, heartbreaking situation, and just thoughts and prayers with them. It's just awful, just horrendous. And we're thinking of them as everyone is thinking of them at this difficult time. So we'll start with that. How are you doing these days?
Evan, yeah, I'm good, man. I'm still in the getting through the start of the off season, start planning out some stuff. Obviously, hope you enjoyed your vacation down the Cape. Obviously, yeah, leading off echoing what you said, and obviously just heart-wrenching news. So thoughts and prayers go to David and his girlfriend and his whole family for that situation. But yeah, for me, just gearing up for the off season. Obviously, we got some traction with the Trent Frederick news, and I think as we've said multiple times already this summer, it's going to be probably news every other day once they get into the swing of things. I think once that Kraken draft gets settled out, we're going to have a whole bunch of player movements. So slowly gearing up for that.
Yes, and the vacation was nice. It was fun. A week of just nothing, sitting on the beach and just detaching from reality. It was a good time. Weird sunburn on my left shoulder though, like really weird. Like I missed a spot, and it's just like
It's
all
concentrated.
it's
Yeah.
it's very bad. It's very tan, but it's a burn. But I actually, yeah, it was a fun time. Weird. Not, first of all, apologies to everyone for not doing Bruins beat last week. Thankfully, there was a poke the bear. Didn't do a Bruins beat. So hopefully we can make up for it with this episode. That's the first time in I don't know how long that we did not talk once last week in like this. We didn't do a
Tragic.
podcast. The people didn't know
The
what to
people the
do.
people the people are up in arms, Evan.
The people were pissed. They're
You were enjoying a nice ice cream at Sunday school. Meanwhile,
yes,
people were throwing chairs and were harassing me on Twitter asking for at Evan Marinofsky. So good to have you
they were.
back in the fold.
Yes. Nice to be back. Nice to be a little bit refreshed. And you'll be on vacation soon too, right? In the next few weeks, at some point.
Yeah, I'm going a few days down to Charleston, South Carolina, where I'm ready
Ooh,
to promptly sweat through all of my clothes very quickly. And then I'm going to Washington State for a couple of days later in July. So
you're
all
joining
over
the
the
Kraken.
place.
Just admit it. Just
I
announce it
am
now. You're
not
joining the
joining.
Kraken.
I am not joining the Kraken. No, I am going to be up in northern Washington. So I'm joining the Canucks. So
Okay. Well, there you go. Like Tortorella when he was the coach. He lived in
exactly,
Washington
yes,
State and he coached the Canucks. So
yeah,
just brilliant.
exactly.
Brilliant moves all around. But yes, that is the vacation talk for this episode. Well, I was on vacation and I kind of missed this. I saw this like usually when stuff happens, you see it immediately. And this I saw like an hour after it happened. And I was like, damn, I really am on cloud nine out here. Trent Frederick signed for 2 years, 1.05 million per. Nothing crazy. I don't think this was a little. It is a little different that they signed him before the Kraken draft, but also like he still could have got picked up because he's
Yeah.
an RFA, so it doesn't matter. But I think this, the money's not crazy. I think the main thing here is he just needs to go for a fourth line legit role. If you're paying him over $1 million, make sure that he's actually playing and he's not just taking up, your cap like some other players have done in the past. So I think that's really it. I mean, do you have any other expectations for Frederick next year?
No, it's one of those ones where I think the expectations have been set for a while now. They have big expectations, I think, going into this year because it's not like previous years where it's like, all right, hopefully he breaks through this year, but we also have Corrali and Wagner and Paul Lindholm and all these other kind of guys in that mix. Next year, I would assume most likely that Sean Corrali's not coming back. I think he's going to get a nice contract somewhere else, maybe Columbus or what have you. So like, there's a legitimate void on that fourth line that not only the fact that they need him, I think, to step into a role, but they need him to excel because that fourth line needs to really bounce back, especially from last year. But even the year before that, they really kind of struggle with the D zone stats that they got. So for him to come on strong, to really carve out a role, to stay in the lineup, it's going to be crucial for him. So expectations aren't different, but they're definitely, I think, raised in terms of his importance to this team because if he's the Frederick that we saw for the first few weeks, first month or so of the regular season last year, and he builds off of that, that's great. But you need to sustain that over the course of a year because he's most likely, barring a trade or signing like a legitimate like fourth line free agent, he's probably the next man up.
Yeah. Am I also wrong to kind of expect a little more? I mean, he's a former first round pick. I know obviously we're at the point now where everyone's kind of like, well, he probably shouldn't have went where he did. But still, I mean, everywhere he's gone, he's produced offensively. Like, I feel like there still is a role for him above just a fourth line agitator, you know? Like, you don't draft those in the first round. But I do think that there's a little bit more offensively to give. And I know that one of the big things this offseason is going to be making that fourth line offensive, making that fourth line be able to do those ozone things that, you know, the fourth line hasn't been able to do in the past 2 seasons. And I think Frederick, you know, can help that, but I think he can help up top a little bit more. Maybe he's a third line presence, you know? I mean, obviously the extreme example is Brad Marchand. You know, Brad Marchand came in, no one expected him to, you know, propel himself to helping the team win the 2011 Cup, and then obviously becoming what he has become now, which is, you know, maybe a top 10 player, top 5 player in the league. Obviously, we don't expect that out of Frederick, but I do expect to see some offense out of him at some point. And again, that comes with comfort on the line, and that comes with just producing. And I think that at some point that has to be expected. And this money doesn't demand that. It's not like, oh my God, if he doesn't score 20 points next year, this $1 million is going to go down the drain. But I do think that the offense needs to come at some point. Speaking of offense, let's talk defense.
Yes.
Brilliant segue right there. We spent the last episode, just now 2 weeks ago, on the futures of Tuukka Rask and David Krejci, which I imagine we will discuss many more times. So I would like to save any new developments on that because there really hasn't been anything new that's come out on that unless I missed it. Maybe I was out on the beach with my head in the sand, quite literally. But I don't think I did. I don't think there's any new developments on that front. With our luck, there will be a development Tuesday morning after this drops. But the one area where the Bruins really need improvements is on D. And you know, you have Brandon Carlo, who is in need of a new deal, but he's an RFA still, so he's probably not going anywhere. But you have Mike Riley, who's a UFA, and it was clear in the playoffs, it was clear all season, you needed more depth on D. And it's tough because I think that, you know, you look at the free agent pool of defensemen for this offseason, you have a lot of older veterans who are not going to be commanding huge long-term deals. I think the guy who's going to get paid, and I know you agree with me on this, is Alec Martinez. Played the whole playoffs on a broken foot. That's some Erik Karlsson shit. That's nuts.
Yeah, not a big deal.
Not a big deal. He'll have no problem paying for the surgery for that when he gets his new deal with whoever. But because everyone's going to be clamoring for him, his money, he's 34, it's going to go up. And it's not really a smart deal for a 34-year-old who, by the way, has scored some huge goals. Like, obviously,
he's a great player.
He has that cup winner that, like, I imagine, like, scoring a goal to win this, like, actually, like, scoring the OT winner to win the Stanley Cup. He also had a goal. I think was it either that
wasn't it game 7 of the conference final too?
It was against the Blackhawks, that one too. And I think that was the same playoffs. That was 14. So yeah, I mean, look, the guy obviously has had a great career and he's going to get paid some more with this resurgence he's had with the Knights. But I don't think that that's a smart move for the Bruins. I don't think that's your move, you know, unless it's a 1 or 2 year thing. But even then, he's 35, 36. That's not exactly what you're looking for.
You don't want to be the team that pays him up and, you know, get the inevitable decline that's going to come. Like, it's going to come eventually. So you don't want to be the team holding the contract when the, you know, the bottom kind of falls out there.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so I think we both agree that's not the move. We'll start with Mike Riley, because that's the guy you currently had, and you have, you know, sounds like from the end of the season press conference, sounds like a deal will be made at some point with him. Do you think he could be a legit top 4 defenseman?
That's a good question, Evan. You know, I think he's a good player. I think you saw a lot of the strengths that he brings to the team, and I think in his role, he excelled in it for most of his time here. It's just the question is, what role do you want him to be on a Stanley Cup winning team, right? Because I think he was definitely exposed in the playoffs, and it's tough because I think he's going to get a nice contract. It's just, do you want the Bruins to be the ones to be signing him when there's other options out there that might give you a little bit of a different dynamic? Like, it all comes down to, do you want both Grzelcyk and Riley on the team together, right? Because I think, I'm not to say they're fully redundant, but does this, you know, do you need 2 guys that kind of fit the similar mold like that to be in the lineup together when, if you know, we'll probably talk about other guys they can target, but if you get 2 other guys who are a little bit different, that are bigger or more shutdown oriented, and you still have Grzelcyk there, is that enough as opposed to getting Grzelcyk and Riley and taking up a spot that could be used for a veteran pickup guy that might be a little bit of a different dynamic from him. So it's going to be tough to see what they end up doing in that regard, because, if you sign him, I don't think it would be like a bad thing, because I think he's still, he has strengths here, but I think he's best used on a Stanley Cup contending team as like a third pairing guy. So,
yeah.
Maybe they sign another guy, or they trade for another legit top four guy, and then you have Riley as a third pairing. Then that's intriguing. But it's all going to comes down to, I think, what the Bruins have to identify to add to this decor, because they got to add someone, obviously, if not multiple guys. But it's all has to be what the identity is and what you're looking for out there. Because I'd imagine after the way the decor got knocked around in the playoffs, it's going to be getting bigger, or getting more shutdown guys, or guys that can eat a lot of minutes, take tougher D zone draws. So if that's the stance they take, then it becomes a little bit harder to map out where Riley goes, because Bruins, I think, would love to have him back. But if you're going to hand him a contract that's $3.5 million, and you could sign a guy like Alexiak or something to that same amount of money, who are you kind of targeting in that regard, right? Because two very different players. I think both teams, or multiple teams, would love to sign either one of them. But if you're the Bruins and you already have Grizzly here, what's the exact plan going to be in terms of remaking that decor?
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's the whole thing of, like, you have needs. A need is not a puck moving left shot defenseman who's really good in the O zone, which you have with Grizzly. And again, also Mike Riley played himself into more money this year. Like, he's not most likely going to get paid like a third pairing defenseman, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
And there are going to be teams who want him. Like he was not, even though he was exposed a bit in his own zone against the Islanders, he was, for the most part this year, very good offensively. That's a good offensive defenseman. And so, again, you're going to maybe have to overpay for him, unless he wants to just stay here. I don't know. We'll see what they end up signing him to, if they do, which it sounds like they will. But I agree with you. I think on a contending team, Mike Riley's your, and I think I said this the night of the Bruins Game 6 loss, was like, if you are going to be competing for a cup, Mike Riley's your third pairing defenseman. But again, you have Lozon, who knows with the Seattle draft, but for right now you have Lozon. So you also have him. I think what's going to come down to is, if you want to add a legit top four defenseman, there's no one like that in the free agent pool that you can have long-term, that you can really build around. And I think you're going to have to do that through trade. And obviously Matthias Ekholm is the guy. That's the guy we've said for months, and again, it's hard to say how much he's available. There hasn't really been many reports about him with Nashville. He has a year left on his deal. It would take less to get him now, because he has a year left. But again, it's also the direction Nashville wants to go. And they went to the playoffs. So maybe they say, hey, we're going to hold on to him and try one more time. But I'll tell you one top four left shot defenseman who the Bruins should not go after. And you've had a chance to talk about this. I have not. It's Oliver Ekman-Larsson. No way. No thanks. There's not even really, like, people are like, well, if you retain part of his salary and you only give up. No, I don't want that. That's not the answer. Find the answer elsewhere with that.
I mean, it's one of those situations where I tried to look when I wrote something about Ekman-Larsson when the rumors came back up again. It's like trying to find some concessions that both teams can make that could warrant it. Because I could say in a vacuum, like pitching it of like, what, screw it. Maybe the Bruins get him and he has this second half rebirth with the new team. It seems like he just wants out now and needs a fresh start, which can go a long way, I guess, towards getting a guy kind of reset. And maybe he goes to the Bruins and new city, bigger market, but no longer has to be the guy, like he was in Arizona, kind of similar to Taylor Hall in Buffalo. It doesn't have to, be that guy. Maybe he rebounds, but if you try to compare it to the Taylor Hall situation, I could see it. But even if you look at Taylor Hall, who was on a horrid team last year, you look at his underlying numbers and you could still see like the potential there. The guy, even though he wasn't maybe putting up the points or the goals, especially that you were expecting, still had elite transition numbers, still was great at generating high danger chances. The problem is he had like Casey Middlestat to bury his chances, so he wasn't burying chances. So you could see making the argument with, like, especially with his contract and how it was 1 year deal, no risk of like, you know what, there's potential there. Let's bring him aboard, and he's still Taylor Hall. He's still a number 1 overall pick. There's a good chance that he at least becomes a serviceable top 6 guy, if not became kind of what he was during the regular season, which was an elite addition to the team.
And the money wasn't bad.
Yes, exactly. This with Ekman Larsson, it's like, all right, maybe he's good, but how good is he going to be? He's not going to be, I think, 2013 to 2019 Ekman Larsson of 22 minutes a night, I think averaging about 17 goals a season as a defenseman. Like, he's not that kind of player anymore. Even if he rebounds and becomes a serviceable, solid second pairing guy, his numbers the last few years have just been dreadful. And it's not even a situation where it's like, well, maybe he's with Arizona and like their system isn't catered to them. But like, look at like Chutrin, how good he was last year. He was fantastic for the Coyotes and pretty much leapfrogged Ekman Larsson in the depth chart. So it's not like it's just like a situation in Arizona. So it's more of just individual play for Ekman Larsson slipping. And again, as you said, even if he is let's say he's a okay second pairing guy at this point, you need the Arizona Coyotes to eat at least probably half of that contract, which I don't think they're going to do. And even then, almost $4.5, almost $5 million for a guy who's an okay second pairing defenseman. Not what you're looking for in this flat cap era. Not when the Bruins have so many other moves they have to make, whether that's also signing maybe an Alexiak or like a Jake McCabe. You have to look at that third line of acquiring not a marginal guy who you hope does well. Like, no, you need to sign like a Blake Coleman or like a legitimate guy that can help drive that line. Like, you've got multiple moves you have to make here. So even if Arizona retains half salary, which I don't think they're going to do, I don't see how that works out for the Bruins. And maybe it's, I think we've speculated like maybe it's the Coyotes have to throw sweeteners into the deal, whether that's, would they move a guy like Connor Garland, who I think we've talked about before, would be a great pickup. Like, that guy could be a top 6 guy elsewhere. If he's with Coyle on the third line, you've got a legitimate probably 20 goal scorer on the third line. That's great. But even then, you still have Ekman Larsson, who I don't think is the solution on that top pairing. Like, you're still getting a guy who is a body. It used to be an all-star, but is it going to help you when you have Connor Garland, scoring goals, doing great on that third line, and you still have a black hole next to McAvoy or Carlo? Like, you don't know what Ekman Larsson is at this point, but it's most likely not that good.
Yeah, and the other thing is you can't be wasting money anywhere because you have to pay Charlie McAvoy next offseason. Like, that's another big thing. Like, you got to do that. And the other thing is, we mentioned the biggest flaw in this defense this past 2 years has been, guys getting to the middle. Other team, they're not good enough clearing out the front of the net. They need bigger guys back there. You need to be better in your own zone. Ekman Larsson doesn't help you in that regard. Mm-hmm. Ekman Larsson's biggest upside is he can help you offensively, which he's been bad at lately. Yes. And you also, just same thing with Riley. Like, the Bruins have Grzelcyk. The Bruins have Grzelcyk, and they might even have Riley. Like, what is the need for Ekman Larsson there? And remember, they were rumored to be in on him, Ekman Larsson, last offseason. It was like, no. And his numbers were even worse this year. I mean, again, Jay Fresh on Twitter has the graphic cards up. 5% WAR percentile. That's awful.
The best of the power play. It's like, all right, maybe he's really bad at even strength, but like, he's a playmaking offensive defenseman. Maybe we add him to the power play. Some issues last year with Grzelcyk and McAvoy. Maybe he's a guy that still could be like a second pairing power play specialist. Not great. No. One percentile. He's in the 1 percentile. How do you do that?
I don't know. I have zero idea. I look at the advanced stats. I trust them. 12% even strength defense, 19% even strength offense. So nothing there. And again, like Jay Fresh even said this on Twitter, like, people can say, oh, maybe it's Arizona. Chychrun was 83% WAR percentile. And that's the guy who basically took his role, as he said, took his job.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ekman Larsson's not the move. Because again, Arizona probably isn't retaining a lot of salary. What are you giving up in return? Like, that's just a whole mess. Don't go near it. Not worth it. There'll be a stupider team like Vancouver to pick up Ekman Larsson. You don't need to be in on that. Guys like Ekholm, worth it. And again, you have to get creative. I mean, maybe there's someone else we're not even thinking of. You go for in a trade. I mean, this is dating myself, but Dennis Seidenberg, granted, I was so young back then, but I don't remember there being like a big push for Seidenberg, unless I could be totally wrong. But I don't, that was getting creative to find a top 4 legit left shot defenseman. Maybe just bring back Dennis Seidenberg. I mean, what the hell? Just do that. Just relive the glory days. People love doing that around here. You mentioned two other names, Jake McCabe and Jamie Alexiak. I'll throw John Merrill in there as well. For
The
left
third
shot touching.
pairing.
Yeah, Alexiak could maybe slot in the top four. McCabe's younger, so maybe he could as well. But those are guys you'd like to see on that third pairing. How do you think the money will work out where they can get one of these guys? Because it sounds like Alexiak will be making the most.
I think like Alexiak. I think Alexiak. Like, let's say if you're not able to make a trade, and like let's say like Ekholm doesn't move, and I think it was Pierre LeBrun had a thing in the Athletic recently about Ekholm, about like, of course he's going to be a trade target because he was in the midst of it last year, but like apparently there's very much a willingness from Ekholm to stay in Nashville, that he would like take like a discount deal to stay there. So that kind of blows up your spot, because Ekholm checks every single box in terms of what you're looking for, right? Like, and even then, other guys out there like this Hannafin maybe, but there hasn't been any smoke at all about like them wanting to move Hannafin. Maybe if like Kachuk wants out and they just want to blow it up, that can change. But there hasn't been any like whispers like there were last year about Hannafin, because I think he had a very good year this past year with Tanev. But there's not any other like legitimate guys that like fit everything that Ekholm is. We're a veteran, helps a win now team, 22 plus minutes a night, shut down, generates offense. Like he's everything you need. If you don't get him, if you want to do the free agency route, I think Alexiak could be like a very good second pairing guy. I think, even if, McAvoy and Grzelcyk, as much as that, I think some people detract from that as being a top true pairing. If your second pairing is Alexiak and Carlo, who are two bigger guys, like, Alexiak, I think especially has raised his stock tremendously the last 2 years. I mean, he's obviously the first thing you notice, big boy, 6'6", 6'7", I think, right? So great shutdown guy. I think he's in the 90th percentile in terms of even strength defense amongst defensemen last year. So, and also has a pretty good shot. I think that's one thing that Cassidy has mentioned is one thing they miss. It's not just like an offensive playmaker. It's not like they need that. They need a dude who can like fire in shots in the blue line. They don't have like a guy who has that threat, which if you got a defense against you that likes to collapse, you need to account for a guy out there that can hammer one home, right? So Alexiak brings that. He's not just a complete shutdown dude who can't chip in offensively. So I think he's going to get paid. He could get $4.5 million. So if he's your big signing, I think he helps. Like I do think if you got him, he fits the size requirement that I think a lot of Bruins fans are going to be clamoring for. And if he's with Carlo, you've got a pretty intrigue, or you could switch it around. I think Alexiak and McAvoy, anyone who's with McAvoy is going to be very good pair. Put him like a shutdown guy with McAvoy. It's going to be tough to score on most nights. And you put Carlo with Grzelcyk. That group had some intrigue last year where they were kind of more of a shutdown line too, where I think Carlo's defensive ability complements a guy like Grzelcyk, who can get the puck out of danger pretty quickly and stuff like that. So if they sign Alexiak as like kind of their big move, I wouldn't be opposed to it, because I think he would fit in well and checks off at least a couple of the requirements of what they're looking for. And then even McCabe, he's a guy that I think if the Bruins can get on a value deal, because granted he's coming off of ACL surgery, so he missed a good chunk of last year, but he's a guy who I think if he was fully healthy could make probably $3.5-4 million in a regular season, because he's a legit like second pairing guy. As bad as Buffalo was, their defense was bad last year, but it went off a cliff as soon as he went down with an injury. So like McCabe's a guy who the underlying metrics love him, but even if you just watch his game, good skater, very physical, if you like look up his highlights, most of them is him just popping guys, but go with the puck on his stick. A dude who I think if healthy would definitely be a second pairing option. If you can get McCabe for, $2 million for a shorter term deal where there's some of that risk coming back, and he's like your third pairing guy, we don't know what happens with Lozon, but like if they go into this offseason and their left side is Grzelcyk, Alexiak, feel free to switch those two, and McCabe is your third pairing guy, you've added two physical, larger guys that also can chip in offensively. Like that I think is what the Bruins have to be looking for. If like, especially if Ekholm is not available, bring those two guys into the fold. Your defense looks drastically different with a guy in Alexiak who's a legitimate shutdown guy, and a guy in McCabe who, even if he's shaking off some rust, is a damn good third pairing guy, and he could be well beyond whatever contract you sign him to, because he's legit, McCabe. Like, it sucks he's coming off that injury, but he's a very, very good player.
Yeah, the more you talk about Alexiak, the more I like the idea of him maybe in the top four, because he, as you said, he does help, and he fits along. He'd fit alongside Carlo great, and he'd fit alongside McAvoy maybe even better. Because I think they had Grzelcyk and Carlo together at the beginning of last year. That's what they wanted. They wanted that to offset each other. So I think Alexiak could work in the top four. If they did that, again, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think it helps.
And I think it's one thing too. It's like I said earlier, like, I think you put anyone with McAvoy, they're going to be very good. I mean, as you said, like, where they put Carlo and Grzelcyk together, McAvoy, they put him with a bunch of unproven rookies, and the metrics are still good, even though you take like a
Lozon mainly,
off the
right?
line. Yeah, if you put them off of McAvoy, the numbers cratered. What happens if you put a guy like Alexiak, who is good, like, is a good shutdown guy who can also chip in offensively? Like, you've got a legit D pairing there. And then again, you put Carlo and Grzelcyk together, who looked pretty promising last year. Like, as much as I think people, that last game from Grzelcyk has maybe put a bad taste in the mouth of some Bruins fans, or you're concerned about Carlo's injury history, they're still two very, very good players. You still want them in your top four. And then if you round out with McCabe, and whether it's Clifton, if he's still here, or if they sign a right shot, bigger guy like, like a Yanni Hakanpää or some other guy like that. I feel like you're a third pairing, you end up getting McCabe and like Hakanpää, who's 6'5". You got a big lineup, man. You got a big lineup, and you still have a guy like Grzelcyk, who's the offensive playmaker. You still got McAvoy, who is only going to get better. People forget about that. He's still going to get better. Like, your defense looks drastically different if you get even those three guys in free agency.
Yeah, and again, that helps. That helps. You're a different defense. You fix your issues. But you mentioned it there at the end, that even if you do get McCabe and Alexiak, or at least just bolster the left side, you still have the right side to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
The right side, again, after McAvoy and Carlo, Clifton's maybe gone to Seattle.
Yeah.
And then Miller's a UFA. We don't know what the deal with him is yet. So the right side, and there's not a lot of right shot guys in the system that can step in on that third bank. So you also have to figure out what the deal is with that. You also have John Moore. Sorry, you do. You still have him. So that's another thing. And that's why you do hope that they don't get complacent and say, well, we have John Moore, we can put on the third pairing, or, oh, we have Lozon, he's going to be a year older. And it feels like that's something they normally do. But after the past couple of years, man, how do you not do what you just said? Where you go out and you go for an Alexiak or a McCabe or a Hakanpää, or just to bolster this. And the tough part is, it sounds like they might just go with Riley. That could be like their UFA guy, maybe add another as well. But that's the thing, is they need to actually make these additions. And again, it sounds great on paper. I mean, again, you said if they rolled out a deep core next year of Grzelcyk, McAvoy, Carlo, Alexiak, McCabe, Hakanpää, or whoever, that's great. Like, that's a cup contender.
Yeah.
But again, it depends on what they actually do. And it feels like Riley will be back, at least given off his comments. No one said anything different, just off his comments. He thinks he's coming back. So who knows? But so that's the defensive segment. That's the defensive segment of today. Before we go, the Stanley Cup did start last night, technically. Monday night it began. So we don't know what happened in game one, but we have our predictions for the series. I say Lightning in 6. Lightning in 6. I think the Lightning. I think the Canadiens have been a fun team. They've been a fun story for a while. But against a team like the Lightning, it's going to wear out. They'll win 2 games. They win 2. But I do think the Lightning pull it out in 6. What about you?
Yeah, I have Lightning in 6. I think, and like I don't want to diminish what Montreal has done, because I wrote a column about them this past weekend, talking about kind of what lessons seems like the Bruins can learn from Montreal. And of course, people are like, well, you playing in a bullshit division. What else do you think they're in there? I'm like, listen, I understand there's that. I understand luck is involved, which luck is involved with every team that wins the Stanley Cup. Like, you need pucks, you need good fortune on your side. Like, that's how it works, right? That's why the 2019 playoffs were so painful, because how much luck fell in the Bruins' favor in that series. But you look at the way they play, though, like, they may not be the most riveting style of play, but they have all the hallmarks of teams that do well in the postseason, right? You've got locked in goalie. You've got an absurd amount of depth. That's what, like, the biggest thing I think now is, and I think we've talked about this before, people want to talk about the Blues and how the Bruins have to get these big, huge dudes because they're going to punch you in the mouth. It's like, yes, you need you need physical guys. You need, I think, especially in the D core, you need a lot of bigger bodies. You'll get Montreal's defense where it's Weber and, Joel Edmondson and a few of these other guys. They've got all these guys who are, over 6 feet. I think the only one who maybe isn't is Gustafson, who's barely even kind of really plays in that rotation. But you look at their top four, it's kind of the same as you saw last year with Tampa, when you saw in 2019 with the Blues, where they've got bigger guys on defense. But then up front, they've got 4 lines they can roll out that can all score. And that's what you need. You need 4 lines that are capable of doing that, whether it's Danault's line or you've got, Tyler Toffoli. Josh Anderson helped out that third line when he came aboard. That fourth line with Perry and Stahl and all those guys, like, you need 4 lines all firing on all cylinders. And that's what, if you're the Bruins, in terms of taking a lesson out of it, one, you got to get bigger on defense, and you need multiple lines contributing. You can't have the Bergeron line leading the way again. You need, ideally, if Krejci and Hall come back, you need those guys operating well, but you need that third line getting, whether it's Coyle coming back from his offseason surgery, playing better. You need, again, I keep on saying Blake Coleman. There's probably a bunch of other guys we'll talk about, but you need like a guy like that, a guy that you have to open up the wallet for and sign. That's going to help drive that line as well. And you need to switch around that fourth line. So as much as Montreal, it drives people crazy that they say they're a team of destiny with just luck. They've got the hallmarks of teams that do well in the playoffs, and you have to start adapting to that if you're the Bruins.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking at their lineup right now. Their top 3 centers: Danault, Suzuki, Kotkaniemi, all developed by the Canadians.
Also plays into it. Yeah, young talent supplementing the core.
Yeah, also developing young talent down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that nuts? And I mean, you just look at the lineup. The fourth line: Armia, Stahl, Perry.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is a legit fourth line. That could be most teams' third line. So yeah, I mean, deep as anything. They also have Shea Weber back there, who's been very good. So
yeah,
that team could definitely give the Lightning a run for their money. I still think the Lightning, though, that's gonna be hard to top. That's gonna be a hard team to beat, and they'll probably repeat as champions. So that is that's our predictions. Lightning in 6. Go freaking figure. But anyways, that is Bruins Beat for this week. Connor, before you go, is there anything that you would like to plug?
Yeah, we're going to be breaking down next couple of days. I'll look at all the Bruins pending free agents and see kind of what the Bruins end up doing there. And then we'll also be running out a column looking at potential trade options for the Bruins on defense, as we kind of talked about today, where I think Ekholm's the big prize, but if he doesn't move, it's a little dour in terms of what you're looking at. Like, even if it's a guy like Vince Dunn, I think Vince Dunn's a good player. I think you're gonna have a lot of pissed off Bruins fans because Vince Dunn isn't exactly a big bodied guy. He's a good player, but maybe not exactly what you're looking for. So we'll have that out next couple of days as well over at BSJ. So subscribe over at bostonsportschannel.com. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at Conor Ryan _93.
This podcast would be a nice little preview for that.
There you go.
Column that people can look forward to. But yes, do all that. For CLNS Media, I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.